Alright, well, we have a lot of small packages. So I guess it's time to get going. Ah, yes. So we got that. Nothing else in here. Let's get the scissors out and make that for these. Definitely reading that one wrong at first, so anyways. And then last but not least, do not cut into these. They have super evil things in between. Alright. So to begin with, we have Boruto, set something, Boruto Back in Time. You know, DVD and Blu-ray versions. Low energy all day. This evening isn't changed at all. I expect the contents of these to be the same, assuming I can even get this out. But that's usually the way Viz rolls. Naruto, Boruto. Boruto, Bleach. And I bet it's the same 3 ads in the Blu-ray version. Disc 1, Disc 2, Disc 3. Disc 1, Disc 2, Disc 3. Although these are Blu-ray instead. Slightly different back. But yeah, same 3 adverts. Next up we have Season 2 of the Osomatsu. Oh, Mr. Osomatsu. Season 1 is a vague memory, but it's vague enough that I didn't think that I had it on Blu-ray DVD. So this is... You know, this being Season 2 is mostly just that I remembered that this was a Season 2 because I had that. Oh, it's different on the inside. It looks like a funny show. I don't know if it's a comedy for real, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Oh, I didn't check Boruto because, you know, it's Viz and it's Naruto, so that one's obviously going to be dubbed. But I guess we should check the back of this. This is Viz, so this is probably dubbed as well, but I can't focus. I didn't even remember that the first season was Viz as well. I guess that explains why this arrived today and not next week. Next week's when the Eastern Star Discotheque stuff comes out. The Gymnastics Samurai. It looks amusing. This sticker is being stubborn. Okay, it's not quite one of those super old ones that falls apart instantly, but it certainly felt like it wanted to be that. It has aspirations of being a piece of shit little sticker. His future hangs in the balance. A story about overcoming odds. Always good. That's an English dub. 12 episodes, 2 discs. And still some sticky residue from that sticker on here. Oh well. Plastic on the inside. That's a lot of plastic. And I'm having trouble getting a hold of this plastic in order to start pulling it and getting this off. Oh my god, it's because this is being that plastic that sticks to the Blu-ray. This is actually very irritating. I really... the fuck? Some of it just jumped at me. Gymnastics Samurai. Naruto Samurai. No, still Gymnastics Samurai. Well, looks like a fun cast of characters. I really hate this residue, especially since doing this, you can feel most of it's coming off. Next up, Black Clover Season 3 Part 5 with limited edition extra book. I don't know if I got the limited edition version of Season 2 Part 5 because I ripped all the DVDs for Season 2 and what I had of Season 3, and I don't have a book and thing. Maybe I put it in my stuff of extras. You know, got the back here, Regions A and B, English dub. Got Black Clover, Season 3 art book. Which if I go through real quick, I saw a lot of scenery. This person saying talk to the hand. Not really, but oh, cool. What am I looking at? Part of me is not sure. Presumably 2 girls. I mean, obviously this one has bazonkas, and this one looks girly, but if somebody were intentionally trying to draw a very effeminate guy that almost looked like a girl unless you look closer, that could be a way to do it. I'm pretty sure 2 girls and that's a guy. But I don't know these characters. But to be fair, this is 3 seasons into a show. What do we have here? This one's probably the most interesting one so far this week. Oh, stupid friggin' residue. Let's see, Regions A and B, that looks like an English dub. Action mystery raised from the paranormal pages of Weekly Shonen Jump. I don't know. I guess we'd have to see. It's not that that sounds bad per se, but I think I'm, like I commented last week, Inspector kind of had me a little worried that it was a more action-y show, but it really only had some of that stuff near in the first episode, because it's really a bit more like the dialogue, a bit more about the dialogue. I don't even know if you can hear me over the crinkling of plastic. Which isn't to say that it wouldn't have been entertaining if it was that, but only that it could be very easily have been something to distract from it. So I'm definitely curious, especially this main character who's got a very Cartman-shaped head. Is Cartman I'm thinking of? Or was it something else? No. But he doesn't look like Cartman. I guess I'll have to find out. 12 episodes. And last but not least comes Robotech on Blu-ray, which I don't think I have it on Blu-ray, but I'm also not quite sure if I completely count it as anime, but, you know, it's worth collecting. So for those of you unfamiliar with Robotech, or familiar with it but unsure why I would be hesitant to classify it, it's more like these stickers are being really fucking annoying. Okay, and that one's just coming apart like an old school one. I'm gonna leave it a beat. So the series called Robotech is a really weird combination of things. The original Robotech show is actually a combination of 3 completely different Japanese anime. That would be Macross, Southern Cross, and Genesis Climber Mospeda. So this is regions A and B. They should only have an English dub, not even Japanese subtitles. Come on, camera, focus. Focus, camera, focus. Yeah, see? And then there's, I think, the movie, the Shadow Chronicles or something like that, and I think that was an original production from the perspective of Robotech. And I don't know, there's a part of me that thinks that if you create a show by using clips from another show, does it really count? Especially when you combine 3 completely unrelated shows. And I don't know. I've got it because I think I need to have it, even though I consider it a very low priority watch. But then again, I think this sticker is just worthless. And look, there's some more of that plastic being annoying. Oh well. Here's this week's anime DVD collection update. Okay, let's see. So, I finished watching both of these. Inspector. So last week I had started watching Inspector. I had generally good praise for it. I would say that the ending of the first season starts kind of showing a bit of a low point for it. Not necessarily bad, but one of these things where once I kind of picked up what the series as a whole was doing, what the season as a whole was doing, I realized that the opening was far more relevant to that than I had originally thought about. And so instead of it exploring a bunch of stuff, it was trying to lead to one specific story. I say trying to lead to, but it's more like it had some setup episodes, but then it flowed into what this season was really about, and I hadn't realized at the time that that was the whole thing. And the real problem with that is you spend like 3, I'm not sure if more episodes, not really moving. I mean, there's kind of this narrative thing going on, but, and it's interesting stuff, but it is kind of maybe not repetitive, but maybe not moving as much. Consider it to be no, I don't think comparing it to that would be quite accurate, so I'm not going to even try to do that. But the general idea is this is the kind of show where you kind of feel like it would be interesting for them to explore their world. Not necessarily in a big world building, oh, everything's connected together way, but in a way where you're just like experiences. I compared it to Mushishi, and that show is a really good example of this, although maybe in the opposite extreme towards what this was seeming to do. And I would have liked it if this one kind of was going the direction I originally was feeling. But, you know, where it was okay, it was fun, neat, etc. Definitely curious about additional seasons, but I don't know if there are. It's set up in a way where I would think there should be, given that the kind of story told here is limited enough in scope that it would make sense to expand on via further seasons. So I guess I'll have to see what happens. And then I popped Kakushigoto back in because, you know, like I said, it's not quite as smooth as Inspector. As in, like, it's a little harder to have this on in the background because there's a lot more actions and activity going on. And you can kind of feel as you watch it that there's some sort of more emotional story that it's, or story beat that it's leading up to. But it's kind of hard to tell why everything that it presents it does. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily the most cohesive flow into that, but it was actually, I thought, a pretty good flow into it. So, I definitely liked that aspect of it more than the comedy, but I did find the comedy enjoyable. I don't tend to enjoy comedy that depends on people making assumptions what other people are saying, doing. And I kind of realized, you know, that kind of humor probably synchronizes a little bit more with original Japanese speakers because the language is less specific than English. So, like, I think you'll probably have something like Japanese grammar Nazis, but I don't think they can be nearly so fucking pedantic as people who use the English language. That would be a general guess. I've never seen anything to prove it, but just a general guess as to my understanding of there tends to be more ambiguity in the way things are phrased in Japanese. And I kind of would guess that there's humor that's kind of extensions of that, of, you know, oh, well, everybody knows that when you say blah and you're standing in school that you're probably referring to X, but what if somebody was silly enough to think it was Y instead? And, you know, that's just a general kind of humor I don't find as entertaining, but again, the show doesn't, it's nowhere near requiring it. It actually has some amusing stuff it does because of some of those jokes it's done. And at the same time, you know, it kind of had other really big things based on some of that stuff. And it's the sort of thing that makes me say, communicate, people, please. But, you know, I digress. It's really easy to kind of fault it for this stuff, but it's really not that bad. And in fact, you know, I found it very amusing to watch and continue watching and finish, and pretty touching to finish. That's one that I would hope is completely finished. If they told me there was a season 2, I'd be raising an eyebrow and saying, why? Anyways, other than that, you know, watching random stuff. So my Friday friend, we ended up not watching any anime because he's going to be out of town for a couple of weeks, and we just wanted to make sure, based on where we were, we'd probably start a new series. And it's better to wait until he comes back to start a new series, or to watch something that comes out between now and then. I'm not quite sure. I really need to order next month's anime because this month is almost over. Should probably also finish taking care of rent. You know, I have 4 days to do it, but you do it ahead of time just to make sure things go smoothly. So, in that regard, you know, we decided to do something else, and since I don't know where that Naruto Shippuden movie that we might potentially watch even is, and the truth of the matter is that one seems like it would be very exhausting to dig out, so I'm not very energized to try and find it. And instead, we decided to look at some unwatched live-action stuff. And if you're not familiar with Short Circuit, I've probably mentioned it before. And, you know, it's definitely something I grew up on a child. And I think that one ended up starting up because he had mentioned not seeing it. And we were looking at the options. And then I just started saying, oh, yeah. And you can see why it's really easy to start watching Short Circuit because it's got a really fucking awesome opening. I mean, a lot of that robot construction is so far out of date. It's kind of interesting, but it's still watching people put stuff together, build a robot, and it definitely has that how
how they make it sort of vibe before they actually had how they make it. And they weren't making something real, they were making, you know, actually the video footage could very well have been making something real. It could have been like various footage used to show the construction of the mechanical apparatus itself or something. Like, maybe puppet's the right word. There could be more than one puppet, I don't know. And, you know, it as a movie, you always have to compare Short Circuit 1 and Short Circuit 2 to a certain degree, because they definitely have very different flavors. They have a kind of dumbness to them. They both do, but they're different kinds of dumbness, and those kind of balance out with what kind of movie they generally are. And so the first Short Circuit, it's pretty much about the wonderment of this robot. To the point where, you know, it does stupid things like, okay, yeah, the robots they made are cool and all, but you know what? If a military person was there, they'd say, those robots are pretty good, but fuck the robots, I want you to build those fucking lasers for me. Because the lasers are pretty awesome too. And really, it wasn't a very good demonstration of robots so much as it was a good demonstration of the lasers. And, you know, the robots are really good for, oh, this would save human lives, but the lasers would be like, fuck you, all modern technology. It's kind of funny. It's the kind of stupid you can kind of expect. The movie's also like, the robot is alive, and that's really a kind of stupid thing because it's not really defining what that as a concept is. It's more like the robot is sentient and self-aware, and and so things they have like, oh yes, spontaneous laughter, well, that's not necessarily something that comes with that. That's just saying, oh yeah, it's basically a human in a robot or something. It's just really weird because it's not even like just number 5 using that terminology. It's all the people too. And it's a stupidness, but as long as you kind of expect and used to it, it's not necessarily bad stupid. It's just kind of, you know, there's a little dumbness in everything. Well, maybe not everything. The other thing I watched, and the dumbness thing applies to this as well, not nearly as strongly, but I watched Interstellar for the first time. And the reason I say the dumbness is kind of in there is because there's a whole lot about it that's kind of, oh yeah, this is kind of what some of the sciencey stuff is, and it is probably true that we would better understand gravity if we had better ability to work with, measure black holes, because that's where general relativity and quantum mechanics stuff would probably both intersect, and that would give us a very good idea of that stuff. In theory. I mean, this is stuff that they were talking about 20 years ago, so maybe they don't talk about it anymore. I don't know. I suspect they do because, you know, I haven't heard of gravity being completely unified. I think there's kind of models for it, but maybe not a good explanation for what gravity actually is or something like that. As in, like, you know, it can be measured and modeled, but we don't have anything that kind of explains why it would be present, as I understand it. I could be mistaken. Maybe there have been advances in quantum mechanical sort of stuff. Like, I understood one of the problems with string theory was that they were finding out more and more that it was really a theory of everything, and then it's just like, oh, well, can we tweak it to model things as we specifically understand them? And maybe they've gotten that far, but I haven't heard anything like that. I would think that there would be a lot of people yelling, woohoo! It'd be on YouTube and everything, but there's a lot of guesswork there. And the whole point is Interstellar has some really weird interpretation and explanations of some of these boundary of our knowledge sort of stuff in order for it to have some things happen, but beyond that, it as a movie is very reminiscent of Contact, where again there's kind of these valid scientific ideas, and I think Contact is a little bit better in terms of not straying too far from explicitly stating things that are ever so slightly not quite as we understand them. So you could almost say that the science of Contact is a little bit better, but they're both movies that aren't really about the science. I mean, Contact a bit more than Interstellar, I think, but they both lean heavily on it, and they're both completely different genres of movie. But I think them as movies are more about the human experience in the face of some of this stuff. And in that regard, that's where both movies actually succeed pretty well. I would say some of the mystery that comes from Interstellar is a little strange, whereas Contact is one that kind of blows you away, which is interesting because Contact is smaller in scope than Interstellar, I would say, but you know, that it's interesting, and maybe most of that is just how these various things impact me. There's a couple of scenes from Interstellar that didn't hit me as strongly, but there are a couple others that did hit pretty strong. And I really don't want to say them, because if you've not seen Interstellar, it's, you know, something you'd want to actually watch and find out, I guess. And overall, yeah, definitely a great movie. It's just kind of interesting, you know, talking about how there's these dumb things in there, but somehow they don't derail it, because Interstellar is really about the human experience going through this stuff. So the suspension of disbelief is one where you have to go, you sound like you're full of shit, but whatever. Take me on this little adventure that you're going on. I call it a little adventure, but I'm pretty sure it's a bigger adventure. And there's characters that well, okay, there's at least one character that I loathed, and, you know, we were supposed to hate him, and there's another character that I'm like, oh my god, you idiot. And, you know, I'm trying to think how to say this stuff without spoiling anything, but for the most part, you know, it's got characters in there, and I'm pretty sure you're supposed to understand most of these things. The one I was just talking about, oh, you idiot. Actually, I guess both those characters had emotional things that are just like, I kind of understand the source of those emotions, but the reactions to those emotions are kind of what makes them bad. And I think the show understood for one of them. For the other, I don't think it quite understood. That anybody who's like, oh yeah, I can understand how that would be hard, could also look at it and say, but it's hard for everyone. So you shouldn't be treating this like you're a special snowflake. You should do the right thing that you need to do. Or at least try to do that. And I don't want to go into more details without spoiling stuff, because these are just thoughts I had, and usually I use y'all as an excuse to, you know, say these out loud and say, oh yeah, how about blah 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 blah. But I also don't want to spoil it. I know that there's this evidence that spoilers actually tend to cause people to enjoy movies more, but in this case, I think it's better if you get a chance to watch it without knowing what's going to happen. Now, it is a long movie, but, you know, long happens. Other than that, mostly Dead by Daylight. It's no surprise. So, the interesting thing, I guess, about Dead by Daylight is it exists in this niche that draws people in, and the thing that keeps me in there is probably the same thing that makes other people get in there, but I think I do it for the opposite reason of most people. And that's, Dead by Daylight is definitely a game that encourages people to be really competitive. I probably said this last week. This is something that, you know, was the original reason I didn't want to play, and for me, it's interesting to play because this urge to be competitive is there, and I'm like, I want to be a non-competitive person in there. This is similar to the reason I really like helping people play games as a member of the video game community. It's not that like I'm bad at games, and there's some games I'm actually really great at, and I just don't try for some of those, and so it's kind of weird. But I'm actually pretty game for being the person that people get to beat up on or learn on. And while that's not always happening with Dead by Daylight, that's kind of what I mentioned last week about the niche I was finding that I was enjoying, which is, you know, I go in there to be the killer who just kind of smashes things around a bit, but, you know, I keep the survivors engaged. And in my experience, the less experienced the survivors are, the better I feel coming out of the game, mostly because not only do I get points, but usually they get a lot of points. And if they're playing like that, then they're probably, maybe they're playing at the same level I do when I'm Survivor, and they're not even seeing half that amount of blood points of every game, if that's the case. Maybe they're doing better than me and they get a little more on average, but I get the feeling for a lot of those people, they come out of that match saying, trick that fucking killer, that idiot, and they have a ton of blood points and they don't kind of realize, you know, I'm intentionally doing things so that they can. And sometimes it can be really hard, because sometimes I can push real hard because I'm trying to get something done, and in the end somebody dies, and I never intended for somebody to die. But you know, if it goes really bad, then survivors actually get really fucking terrified and don't do any work. I think I mentioned this last week. And, you know, I want them to finish generators, open the exit gates, and successfully escape. And I guess a really good example was one from last night where I had a challenge to hook survivors in the basement. And that's tricky because I usually try to do the opposite of that. If I knock someone down and we're in the basement, I'll actually take them out of the basement because I want them to be rescued. And some of these people, I think, probably get it, or they're probably thinking, what an idiot. Doesn't really matter. The entire point is, you know, usually I'm doing the opposite of that, so trying to explicitly do that was hard. And I wanted to mix it up and try to do it as a killer I've never played before, so I played as the Nightmare, aka Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And this was on the, first of all, the indoor maps tend to be pretty killer friendly. And this was one of the indoor maps. I'm trying to remember what the facility is called, but it's the one that the doctor is from. It's got this really menacing electric machine near the center where there's always a generator. And that map is definitely a very hard map for survivors. Mostly because, I mean, people talk about 3 gen locks. So basically, survivors are supposed to unlock generators. They need to, not unlock, they need to repair generators. Once they've repaired 5 of them, the exit gates are powered and they can open those gates and exit. And there's always 7 generators. So there's 2 more than the number of generators that need to happen. And the game has a concept called a 3 gen lock, which tends to happen unless you're paying really close attention to stuff. But if the final generator to repair is next to the 2 other generators, so there's 3 generators but they're really close, then it becomes almost impossible for the survivors to actually win unless the killer decides to throw, because the killer can patrol those generators and then very slowly accumulate survivor mistakes until there's no survivors left. Basically, he can deplete their resources and all that. And to give you an idea of how bad this map is, they were 4 gen locked, as in there were 4 generators close enough together that I could patrol them and prevent them from there. And it did not help that as the Nightmare, 2 of these generators only had a single spot that survivors could repair the generators from, so I, you know, could put traps there and make it really hard for them to get that stuff done. And the reason I kept pressing it hard is because I wanted to see if I could get this one hook in the basement. And unfortunately I did, but I say unfortunately because while I had chased people into that general direction and was hoping they were close enough that I would get them down there, 2 of them managed to wiggle out of my grasp before then, but the 3rd person unfortunately was in a locker close enough that I was able to just grab them and hook them down there. And I was hoping they had not gotten to stage, you know, the final stage and would just die, but they did. And at that point it was stop sabotaging generators, gotta let the 3 remaining guys finish the 2 remaining generators. And, you know, I kind of indicated that by finding them like I always do, but kind of indicating to them, I know you're there hiding behind the thing, I want you to go there and finish the generator. And I hope they got the message, because I stopped messing with them and they got that, and I opened the gate, and actually that's the first time I've ever found an invisible hatch. And it's funny that I found it as Killer. I think Freddy is probably one of the better ones to find that, because he's the same size as the survivors, so he can notice that change in elevation when walking over an invisible hatch. And so that was also nice, because, you know, I got the devious points for opening the gates and letting them flee, and then I also got additional devious points for successfully closing the hatch, you know, when 2 of them left and the third one hadn't. And the unfortunate thing is the one guy that got caught, who, or the one guy who got killed, and I didn't want him to die, but I was hoping that he still had enough time to be saved from the hook. It's unfortunate. The other unfortunate thing is, you could say that it was a pretty valid kill, because not only was I, you know, 4 generator locking them, but they were hiding enough that they had idle crows. I think they had come by another name, but it basically meant that they were sitting in the same general area, not doing stuff long enough that I kind of realized there are crows bugging that locker. And again, it was close enough to the basement that I just took him there and hoped for the best for him. It's unfortunate, because it meant that I caught him twice before and I lost track. It's unfortunate, but, you know, that's not competitive per se. You know, at the end of the day, I'm seeing what I can do, but I'm not planning to try to win, if you catch my drift. So it also makes it hard for them to bait me away from those 4 generators. Can't blame them for that, but yeah. And I'm playing more Survivor games, because I'm finally putting blood points into Survivors, but the real problem is I want to be playing as Cheryl Mason, or rather any of her or her costumes. But I think before I even start leveling her up, I want to unlock all of the perks that I would be interested in. So that's a good number of survivors to get up. Should be interesting. In other news, Oni is really fun. Now, granted, this could be because, you know, since I'm a killer who tends to not win his matches, maybe I get partnered up with a lot of less skilled players, and more skilled players would just run circles around me. Oni can be hard, but I got the Minotaur skin for it, just because not all the killers have skins that make them into something completely new looking. But, you know, the Minotaur is great. I guess I recently flipped through Dave Made a Maze, and that's got fun Minotaur stuff in it as well. So, you know, that's kind of great. You just start, you know, you collect your blood orbs, and then a generator pops on the other side of the map. You go into blood rage mode, and then you rush across the map really, really, really fast. Then, if you happen to run into something, then bam, Survivor pancake. It's an instant down. It's fun when you hit, and when you come rushing in at these survivors who maybe never fought an Oni before, you know, they kind of get pummeled a bit. But fortunately for them, I think they kind of understood that, you know, I wasn't there to stop them. So, like, you know, I got one on each on a hook, because when you hook all survivors once, then you're set guaranteed to get a certain amount of points or emblem or something. I don't know, but you know, you want to do that so that you at least accomplish that. And then after that, you know, when I catch somebody for a second time, what I was tending to do was pick them up and start walking towards wherever I was next going to investigate survivor stuff, so they'd always be able to wiggle from my grasp. You know, very clearly this person who was quick to hook is no longer hooking at all anymore. So hopefully they kind of got the message, kind of had fun. You know, I'm there to just start smacking them and smashing and having fun. And hopefully, you know, they're like, man, that's hard to dodge, but maybe because they're not dying and they get to try it over and over again, it's giving them the opportunity to learn. You know, it's kind of like a killer way of saying, we should make these fucking cutscenes skippable, because unskippable cutscenes is unforgivable. Fun stuff. But, you know, I've been dabbling with all the killers. Well, not all the killers. Maybe like half the killers, and enjoying them. that's where I've been getting my enjoyment from the game. And when I play as Survivor, I try to play as well as I can, just because I can't quite goof off there. I have to do my own things, but I understand that other people are there to try to win, and I understand the general idea of what survivors should be doing in order to increase their chances of getting out of there alive. I'll just not be a tryhard about it. So, I don't look at that killer that I managed to loop a whole lot and say, haha, you idiot. I look at them and say, dang, that kind of sucks for you. And I did have a Bubba that was really angry about my successful looping, escaping, and hiding all around. And I can't blame him. I was the last one. I hadn't been hooked at all. I don't remember how long ago this was, because this was when I was still only playing as Claudette, because she's the only one I had leveled up. But now I have Bill leveled up, and I'm leveling up David, and I guess I'm going to put some points in Feng Ming and Dwayne. I'm still undecisive about Decisive Strike, which is kind of funny to say, because that one is a super meta perk as well. And there's a part of me that thinks I should work on getting that, but there's another part of me that's like, I don't want to be that much of a tryhard. I want certain things that just look like they're fun, that might help me stay alive a little bit longer without saying, oh my god, they've got the same ones that everybody has. So, I might have a build that I have for, I really got to unhook people, and maybe I'll just go all in on them as opposed to just hiccuping all the time, apparently. Maybe I'll go all in on a build like that as opposed to, oh yeah, I have to level them up too. There's a lot of people to level up. Yeah. I want to try things, and I want to get it all onto Cheryl Mason, so that I can do whatever I want. I could either go with the standard Heather Mason outfit, or Alessa Gillespie outfit, or Lisa Garland, or, I've got all that unlocked. I look forward to that, but it's going to be weeks before I'm doing that, if not longer. And that's a problem with the grind with Dead by Daylight. Oh well, what you gonna do? Well, I don't know. Hopefully I play tonight, but I've been kind of rambling and sleepy, and we'll have to find out. So, let's go ahead and wrap things up there. Y'all, have a nice week.